Wolf United, WFC.
Good evening and welcome to Saturday Night Live. I'm joined tonight by Connor and Gareth. How are we, lads?
Good, thank you.
Yes, all good.
Good stuff. Tonight's show then, we've got a preview. We've got our final home game of the season tomorrow against West Ham. I suppose we better briefly touch on the lost ground on fourth place as well after the disaster from Brighton before. Myself and Gareth will add our thoughts as well for the Player of the Year, because I know, Connor, on a Friday you've been doing a little vote, shall we say, and counting it all up. And we'll also talk this government-led review into women's football, and I think it was Tom Gary that posted a couple of days ago sort of an 8-point plan. So yeah, we'll get into that as well. First things first then, we may as well go straight into West Ham tomorrow. Final home game. We've obviously, like I said before, lost ground on fourth. Last time out, disappointing draw. Struggled to sort of create any chances, really, break them down. Sort of story of the season in certain games. Gareth, I'll start with you tomorrow. Well, I'll start with you now on tomorrow. Thoughts on the game? What are you expecting? Obviously, different proposition at home. We've got a few more players back than we had last time. What do you think will happen?
Yeah, I think looking back at the Villa game, there was criticism afterwards. I think some of it was fair. I think some of it potentially was a little bit unfair. I think it was fair to criticise the substitutions. I don't think they were particularly attacking substitutions. I think we maybe could have brought players on that were looking to go and win the game. But that being said, the attackers that were on the pitch created chances. There were chances made for them. They just didn't take them. And the responsibility for taking chances kind of falls on the players, really. There's only so much the coaching staff can do in terms of setting the team up and taking the chances. That's on the players. So I think it'll be different. I think West Ham are a different side. We've kind of seen Villa play before. When they play against the top sides, they generally just kind of sit back and invite pressure. They did against Arsenal, and it took Arsenal. When they played at Villa Park, took them the first half. Really, it wasn't until kind of the end of the first half, beginning of the second half, when they started to really kind of break through and create chances. So. I think West Ham are a different side in the sense that they're going to play slightly differently, and I think we'll create more chances against them. We just need to take them, and with it being at home, that's a different kettle of fish. I think after last week, the training will have kind of been focused, and they've all been in for a bit longer, not coming straight off the back of an international break. We just need to go and win. We need to take the chances that come. I think defensively, we're pretty solid against sides like West Ham. We just need to score. And I think that's the tricky bit.
Yeah. Connor, I'll come to you. Obviously, we've talked about sort of taking chances there. I think against Villa, it's something like 20 shots, but only 7 on target. It doesn't sound great. I want to say, is it a worry? But yeah, talk to me on your thoughts for it.
Yeah, I've said it on the 2 shows I've been on this week that, the criticism was we went defensive against Villa. We didn't. We created more than enough to win that game. And like I said, on any other day, you score early and it's a completely different game. If Martha or Jackie score those 2 chances they had in the first 10 minutes, we probably go on and win that 3 or 4-0, but we don't. And we've struggled all season with this. If we don't score 1 or 2, particularly in the first half, we struggle and make it so difficult for the rest of the game. We can never seem to kick on then. So chance creation's not a worry as such. Obviously, we want us to be creating all the chances and so many more, but it's not a massive worry. The worry for me is we're not scoring, and if Russo's not on form, no one else is chipping in. Tooney's dropped off this at the back end of this season. Don't know where the goals have come from for her. The midfield are not chipping in with any at the moment. Zellam's getting a couple from set pieces and these kinds of things, but other than that, they're not Sorry, my camera's on a mad one here. I'm just going to keep talking and hope it refocuses. Other than that, you're looking at, Mark Thomas is on a couple of goals. Galton's, had quite a lot of goals this season, but again, this back end of the season, it's not. So it's a strange one because we're creating decent chances, but we're just not taking them. So I'd be more worried if it was the other way around, because then that shows that there's something wrong on the training field, and that the players are not understanding the job's right if we're not creating anything. We weren't at the start of the season as well. I think just quickly on this West Ham game, the last time we played them was our lowest in chance creation against anyone outside of the top three. We've only had it lower twice, and that was against City and Chelsea. So yeah, it just shows the kind of tough opposition that we have got tomorrow, unless we can fix that.
Gareth, do you want to take this comment on screen?
Yeah, I mean, I think they will. I think they will try to frustrate us. I think, teams are going to watch us play, and they're going to know that, we potentially take 2 or 3 opportunities to take a goal. So, yeah, I think they will, but I don't think they're necessarily going to play to script and, play football by numbers. I think they will look to attack. They're not going to sit back and just kind of play for a draw, because there's going to be players there that are going to be looking for contracts and looking to stay where they are next year or look to move on. So although kind of really in terms of anything to play for, they're playing for kind of the middle positions, and there's nothing really too much riding on it. There's places in the team, and there's bigger moves, and there's the Euros coming up, and there is actually a lot on the line really to kind of play for. So yeah, I think we'll kind of look to frustrate us, but I think they'll also push out and look to try and create problems in our half as well.
Yeah, and obviously I noticed, Connor, you were talking about obviously sort of relying on Russo, which again I agree with. I noticed I was reading one of your tweets before about sort of the difference between us and City is that obviously if we concede 2, we don't go and score a shed load more, whereas they've just scored, 4 or 5 goals in the second half. I think 4 was it, the 3 took half time. Could it be then potentially a chance for Senior Brune to make a mark? Obviously, she has been out sort of for a bit, in and out the side, in and out of injury. What do you make on that? And then we'll get into sort of Charlie's question and the Vilda and sort of selection debate.
Well, yeah, she needs to. You need goals from all over the place. You need goals from midfield. You need goals from your back line as well. Obviously not as many, but your forwards are your goal scorers, as everyone knows. But you do need goals from elsewhere. And unfortunately, because since Senior's come in, she had the toughest run that we could possibly have had, because we had Arsenal, Chelsea, City. City twice, actually, back to back. And then she's been injured. She came back for the Old Trafford game, made a little cameo at the end, and we've not seen her since. So it's a strange one with her. And we said this on last night's show with her, that I'd like to see her extend just for another year, just to see what she can do, because she's not had a single chance, really. I think the stat was yesterday, she's had 4 shots in a United shirt. It's like, so yeah, if she can come on and start chipping in with goals, that's great. It's obviously a bit late now, a bit late in the season to start putting up some numbers, but it should. If she can have a good final 2 games, it will put her in good stead in the summer. Hopefully, get the extension into next season, and next season then we can kick on. I put this on the tweet earlier or something like that. That I think this season was almost like a learning process for a lot of players and for Skinner and vice versa. If we get the summer right, they can take those. I sound like Skinner here. Take those experiences into next season and really push on. And Brun is a key part of that. If she can take those experiences she's learned, being involved around the squad. I know she's not played, but she's still been with the squad. Take that into next season. We know the players there.
Yeah, it's interesting regarding her, because I don't know if she is out of contract at Lyon or not, but I always find it interesting when players come from abroad that it usually takes them quite a period of time to settle. There's not too many. In general, not just even at Man United. I think Ona hit the ground running straight away, but yet some players don't, and obviously she didn't play tons of football for Lyon. Gareth, I'm going to let you answer Charlie's question. Is Vilda a player who can break through when teams are going to sit? I do agree. We did go through our best run. I think when you watch her playing her through balls and her link-up play, for me, it just seems better than maybe the other options. But yeah, I'll let you offer your thoughts on that in the midfield.
Yeah, I think so. I think the midfield is tricky. I think there are players in there who are overrated by a lot of people. I think there are players in there who potentially fly under the radar a bit, and people criticize because that's just what we do now. Even when they have good games and a good run of form, it's kind of the done thing to criticize. So I think it's difficult really to. There's no midfield that Mark can pick is going to keep everyone happy. I think that when you look at Jackie, I think potentially has her form kind of warranted a place in the side over people like Borisa? I'm not sure. So yeah, I think she's a player that will be able to play through teams and will be able to kind of break them down. The difficulty there is you need somebody on the end of it to be able to kind of find that chance and put it in the back of the net. And I think, we've got players at the moment where maybe being clinical is actually not what's happening for a while. I think, Leah goes through hot and cold spells. She'll have periods of time where she just absolutely rips people to shreds and is unplayable. But she'll have other periods of time where she maybe tries to overdo it or kind of goes and becomes a little bit anonymous for a while. So yeah, I think it's tricky. I think she is a player that can do that. I think she's a bit more physical as well, maybe than Jackie, and will be able to kind of deal with the physicality of West Ham. I also like Hayley Ladd in midfield as well. I think it depends kind of really what you want to go with, but yeah, I think if I was going with a midfield three, it'd probably be Ladd, Jackie, and Katie. Sorry, Ladd, Vilda, and Katie.
Yeah, I think just quickly on that point as well, the one thing that Vilda has in abundance, and I mentioned this for the first time because yesterday on yesterday's show as well, that her football IQ is a lot higher than I think people give her and Katie credit for. And that on a pitch, this is why I say, particularly with Katie and the kind of criticism she gets, because she gives the ball away a lot. When I kind of look at it, the way that she plays, she's always around her, so she's playing a pass, expecting somebody to be there. And Vilda's very similar to that. She's always one step ahead. She knows where she's going before she even gets the ball. So I think with somebody like her, you put her alongside Katie and Ladd, then you've got that progressive midfield back. Whereas I think Jackie's a world-class player and everyone knows the quality she's got. But I don't think she quite suits this way of playing. I don't think she's quite understanding of what's happening around her with the players around her. So in these, it's no coincidence, like I said, we went on that really great run. The midfield was solid. It was Lads, it was Ellum, it was Vilda. It was two I think was out wide. And I think Stanley might have been in there as well, rotation as well. So yeah, I don't think it's any coincidence that we had that, because we had people on the pitch that could understand each other. That's more valuable than just having names on the pitch for the sake of having the names.
100%. Yeah, which potentially could link into this. Do you expect a 4-2-3-1 again tomorrow? I think for me personally, yes. And it sort of reminds me of a conversation we had at FC on Thursday when people run about changing formations. And it's like, with a couple of games left, if you go to a whole new system that players aren't drilled for, it's probably likely going to do you more harm than good. I think the time for me, I would like to see pre-season as experiment, because I said this, I think it was to John. I'm not fully convinced we have a plan B. Like, if we don't break teams down or the through ball / long ball doesn't come off, I feel like for me that we're a little bit not lost, but maybe struggling for where to go. I'll let you answer that, Gareth, and then Connor, you can add in as well, and we've gone through it all then.
In terms of the formation?
Yeah, or anything like maybe switch it up or change of personnel or something.
I think it probably will still be 4-2-3-1. I think kind of what we see a lot in women's football compared to men's football is the kind of use of a double pivot rather than a single pivot. I know Matt really doesn't like it. But I still think we'll see that. I think we'll probably see something like Ladd and Zellum holding. And like I said, I would go with potentially Borisa as the 10, but then what do we do with Tooney? Does that mean Tooney drops out, or does that mean Tooney goes wide? I prefer Tooney going more centrally. So yeah, I think it's tricky. I would probably. I mean, it depends kind of what the back four is like. If Diane is fit enough to kind of play the full game, I think you start with her and Maria, and then the fullbacks after her. And do we want kind of two really kind of defensive-minded players holding? I don't know. I think the formation will be the same. I think there'll be a few changes. I would like to see Hansen start. I think she, has been working hard and kind of deserves the opportunity, particularly after kind of spending a lot of time on the bench recently. And obviously, I think Russo starts up front. I think that's a given. But yeah, I think substitutions will be key, and want to see them happen early. I want to see them be positive attacking changes as well.
Yeah, formations are a weird one for me because I make this point a lot, and people don't like it. Whatever, I don't really care at this point. But formations are not there. Players don't think formations are like during a game. You set up a formation most of the time in defensive transitions, not attacking transitions. Now you do have, like, let's take 4-2-3-1 as your example. 4-2-3-1 is very similar to 4-3-3 and 4-4-2. They're very, very similar. But you have a 4-2-3-1. Do you really think, let's say, for example, if Leah and Martha Thomas are on the wing, they're thinking, oh, God, I've got to get in this line here because we've got to make a 3 across to make sure that it doesn't happen. You attack in different ways in different moments of the game. Different scenarios happen in a game, and it's finding those angles and the triangles and, pushing out the fit. Now, don't get me wrong. I said in defensive shapes, you'll have. I notice a lot of the time we kind of go 4-5-1 defensively anyway. We kind of go flat across the middle, which is fine. But this whole idea that if we change to a 4-3-3, we'll be magically much better. It's a load of nonsense. I'm sorry, because it's still the same personnel. It's very, very similar. You still got one down the middle and your 2 wide players, and then somebody in like your 10 role. So yeah, I don't think it makes too much difference if you change around formations. Because prime example of what I'm trying to say is if you watch Russo in a game, she's your striker, right? Look at how deep she comes in a game. Do you think that's a 4-2-3-1? It's not, because there's nobody there because she's dropping into midfield. So essentially then you've got a 4-2-4. So it's not going to make a whole host of difference. It's your little scenarios and transitions in games that make the difference.
It's interesting you're saying about that flat 3 because I was thinking the zones. Can you imagine? Oh, Leah's thinking she's got to be in zones 13 and 16 on that left-hand side. That would confuse or, let's say, wind up a few people. I just think in terms of the midfield, like I've always said this since summer, it's probably for me our best midfield we've ever had. And we're fortunate that we've got players that can come in and rotate and, still do a job. It's just, again, like I said before, sort of that link into the attack and that finishing of chances. Gareth, I'll come to you. I want to look at it from a West Ham perspective. Obviously, they're sat up in 6. Could potentially, depending on Spurs, finish higher than them. But what are you expecting from West Ham? Because they've had a bit of an up and down season. They've done okay in the cup. Unfortunate to get a heavy defeat against City. I don't think they deserve that. But what do you make of their transition under Ole Harder in his first sort of full season? Because I know I had them tipped for like second bottom.
Yeah, I kind of thought they would be down there. I think they've had a really strong season. I think, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, they've just been the epitome of average. They've just had the most average season you can possibly get, right? They've got 7 wins, 6 draws, 7 defeats. It literally couldn't get more middle of the road than that. But I think West Ham fans will be happy with that. I think they saw some big players leave last year. And I think, I thought at the start of the season that a lot was going to kind of ride on 1 or 2 players. But they've played well, I think. I think they've had a good season, and I think that kind of really gives them the basis to kind of build on. I think when you look at a number of other clubs kind of underperforming potentially, I think people thought Brighton would kind of push a bit more. I think people thought Everton would do better. People definitely thought Leicester. Well, I thought Leicester would do better for sure. Whereas West Ham have just kind of had a season where they've gone under the radar and have, had some big wins, have picked up some points, but also kind of thrown some silly points away. That defeat to Leicester probably is one they're not too happy with. But they're a solid side. They can cause teams some problems. You know, we got a draw against them away, and you know they've kind of pushed some other sides hard is what I was looking for. They're pushing other sides well kind of this season as well. So yeah, I think we should come through it comfortably. I think we are comfortably the stronger side, but I don't think they're going to be a complete walkover. They will be difficult to break down. But I think, you know, West Ham fans will probably kind of end up mid-table is a good season for them and want to build on for next year.
Yeah, 100%. Connor, I want to come to you, obviously, again, sort of West Ham, from what you've seen of them. Your thoughts from them in general, but obviously with you being at the away game as well, that we didn't make because it was midweek. What do you think maybe changed between sort of then and now? What do you think in terms of them?
Yeah, it's a weird one because that away game, up until Villa, was by far the worst I felt leaving a football ground for a long time. It was very late. Obviously, I think it was 94th minute, and the inevitability at that moment. It was everyone around. We were all saying that they're going to score in a minute. It was so inevitable that we would, and the players obviously felt that as well. Hence, going on to concede, but. They're just an organised team. Whenever I've watched, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an expert on West Ham because I'm not.
No.
But they just seem very organised. They play a different system to most. I think they do play a back 3-5 for most of their games, which is something a little bit different. Like Gareth said, they've challenged, especially at home. At home this season, I think they only lost once before we played them at home in the league this season. So they've done very well there. So, yeah, I'm not expecting an easy game. It's going to be tough to break them down again, something that we've struggled with. So, yeah, I agree. I think this is where I know we're going to come to it a bit later with this new plan that's being put in place. But this is the issue with the WSL at the moment. You've kind of got the top three and United. We're kind of just on the brink. And then you've just got everyone else just kind of fighting for nothing, really. Just kind of in the mix somewhere. Yeah. So, yeah, West Ham could jump Spurs. It's unlikely, obviously, with Spurs' games. And I think West Ham have obviously got Arsenal on the last day, so it's unlikely. But, yeah, they're just a decent side. If they can get a couple of quality players, and if their owners really do back and invest in this women's side, that they could be dangerous next season. You know, Gareth was talking there about Brighton. Back in Christmas, before everyone was out with Brighton for the top three. Now, look at what's happened to them. Spurs are investing more and are pushing back up as well. So if West Ham get that investment, there's no reason why they can't push on.
Yeah, I think you think of that, and obviously Brighton have just put together a new plan and sort of a way for growing as well, and got a very good training facility down there. So it's certainly shaping up for the next couple of years anyway to be, a very, very good league. Obviously, Everton have got the investment, Leicester have got the investment. So we just need a bigger league, but that's a different show for a different time. Before we go on to the sort of government led review, I want to go on to the Player of the Year vote. So Gareth, I'm going to let you start us off with your Player of the Year.
I think it's tricky. I mentioned a couple of players on Twitter, and choosing between them is difficult. But I'm going to go. The two players I mentioned on Twitter were Leslie and Tooney. And the reason for that is that whenever we've kind of needed something, it's usually been one of them two that have pulled us out of kind of whatever mess we've found ourselves in. So Connor's just told me actually I get 2 votes. So that's helpfful because they're the 2 votes. So Leslie and Tooney. I think the goal against Spurs for Leslie was great. I think Tooney had a better first half of the season. I think Leslie's had a better second half of the season. They've kind of swapped in kind of being a number 1 and number 2 in terms of points winners. And yeah, I think they're just 2 players that we can build around, 2 players that are going to feature heavily for England kind of this year's Euros, and obviously looking ahead to the World Cup shortly as well. They'll kind of feature prominently there. And yeah, I think they're 2 players that we can build a side around. and hopefully will kind of be wearing that United shirt for a long, long time.
Yeah, it's probably going to be no surprise to people that I've picked exactly the same too. I'm sorry, Connor. You'll have to add that to your spreadsheet, but never mind. But yeah, I just think, listen, I don't think I need to really explain too much, but I just think, considering Russo only sort of was fully fit around October time, I just feel like for what she's done and what she's achieved, and I think not even just going off goals and assists, I think just the work rate. Like if you watch, like you talked about earlier in the show, Connor, she's dropping deep. She's involved in so much running and movement and hold up play. I still feel she don't get the credit she deserves, especially on the international stage either. In terms of Tooney, yeah, again, last year I thought she'd probably had her best season, but I think she's just smashed that this year. Now I think I'd say this year's the best season. Broke into the Lionesses squad. I think it was around November. I think she's on something ridiculous now. They're like 13 goals in 10 games. I mean, granted, they've come against like Tim Pot sides, but still, we're not bothered. Record's a record. And yeah, I think what she's added as well as her goals is her assists. And I think I read before her assists, I think she's like one behind Frank Kirby for a season or a season record, which is 9. So, yeah, like you said, Gareth, 2 players that we can sort of build a squad around, really. And I think the exciting thing for me is they're both very young. You know, we've not got these players sort of late in the career. We've got them at the very start. So I think for me, if you're looking for inspiration, definitely them two. I noticed here Sang mentioning about Earps. I think Earps again, very, very, very good this year. Again, still gets slated, which is bizarre. Again, I could probably say this is her best season. I noticed United tweeted out about clean sheets the other day and how many she's got. But yeah, unfortunately, Connor, it's the same 2 for me.
Yeah, I think
for Gareth.
I think just looking at I've just added those to the chart. So yeah, it's looking likely who's going to come out number 1. I think Russo's in a lot of people's votes anyway. I've narrowed it down to 4. Like I said, you're not going to get mine tonight, unfortunately. You're going to have to wait another week for mine. But yeah, my 4 does include the 2 that you've mentioned as well. Just because, you know, top scorers, you know, an assist for us this season, where we'd be without those this year. So yeah, I can see why that most people have gone for those. But like you said, Earps is in there with a shout. The fact that Honor's had so little mentions, I think, just shows maybe the standard that she's set, and it's that's just her. No one's surprised that she does solid 8 out of 10s most weeks. So that's always an interesting one as well.
Yeah, I think with Honor being new last year, it probably not helped the cause, but like you say, everyone realised by the end of the season that she was consistent and very good and fully deserved it last year. And I think that's probably, you know, done her wonders. It's interesting because obviously with Russo, I remember at the time she signed, I was like, better signing that than the Americans, and I got laughed at, well, and abused. And now it's quite funny because now people are like, oh, actually, do you know what? It might have had a point, you know. And I'm just glad everybody loves her. But yeah, there we go.
Hang on a sec. Can I just quickly? Can I correct this comment here? I do not use Excel. I am a Google Sheets person. We don't use Excel in this house. So all about Google, unfortunately.
I think John's the one that's the spreadsheet. Just to put that out there, he loves a good chart. Although his charts are not very
does it all on Excel. It's a right pain because he'll send it me, and I've got to convert it into Google Sheet. Oh, it's just a pain. It's just easier on Google. I'm advertising Google. I don't know why.
Shares in Google. That's what it is. He wants his money. Gonna move on to the what was I talking about now? The football-led review by the government that's supposed to be happening this summer. Obviously, the plan is to boost women's football in England. Now, there was already talk months ago, wasn't it, from the FA about they wanted so many fans in grounds in the WSL and the Championship, and they wanted this and they wanted that, and then there's been sort of talk of VAR light and more TV and sponsorship deals. But interestingly, Tom Gary tweeted an 8-point review that he felt the other day should be something that, you know, the government should look to sort of discuss and work in to grow the game. First thing, I'll just bullet point it quickly. I had expanding the top leagues, WSL and the Championship. The second was to increase access to football in schools and at grassroots level, and that's across obviously boys and girls. Third one was to stop 11:30 kickoffs on a Saturday or a Sunday. Number 4 was access to modern stadiums. So obviously we've seen the success of Barcelona recently. I think today Wolfsburg played at their men's ground as well. I think that was about 15,000 there. His fifth point was obviously the sort of imbalance in prize money. Again, which, looking at next year, the FA Cup is supposed to be increasing. But yeah, we've still got a lot to go in terms of leagues and leagues positions. Point number 6 was referees in the WSL being full-time. Point number 7 was sort of around player safety, medical care, things like that, and welfare. And number 8 was wage limits. So a lot to digest. I think the best bet is to go through it point by point, and you can add your own views in as well. Obviously, those are just Tom's views. All very practical. I don't think there was anything personally with sort of, hugely wrong. I think obviously it's good to have them. Yes, they're not all going to come at once. Yes, we know some of them like referees and that requires money and access, things like that. But I'll start with you, Gareth. Something we've banged on about, it seems like for years, about the leagues. Now, Tom sort of looked at it. He did say about 14 to 16 in both Championship and WSL. But his main focus was the third tier. I mean, do we really need to go into detail? I'll let you speak on it anyway. I know we have done a lot on this, but he sort of talks about expanding it so that fans, leave there wanting more. We don't want 3-week breaks. If you're a new fan, you don't want to come in, watch a game and find out, well, actually, we've got an international friendly so they can have Christmas dinner together and we can get these YouTube videos. And then we've got some other tin pot excuse, but go for it.
Okay, so the focus on the third tier was because there is now just a bottleneck of quality there. What we see when only one side gets relegated from the championship is that the league winners don't necessarily go up, which is crazy. So what you're going to see is just this kind of stagnation there, and just teams get gradually better and better and better and aren't going up. So I think actually the top of the National League, or the National League in terms of Northern Premier, Southern Premier, is actually probably about as good as the bottom 5-6 teams in the Championship. I think we've seen Sunderland this year come up and challenge. Watford have come up, and they go into tomorrow's game and a point, they'll be safe. So we've seen the teams that are coming up being the ones that actually, I mean, Watford, if it was all even, there were no points deductions, would be down. But Sunderland have come up and they've fought and they've done well. Whoever comes up out of Wolves and Southampton, I imagine will probably stay in the division. And both of them would stay in the division. I think if we had 2 going down, you'd probably see a good chance that both of them would stay up. So yeah, I think it is tricky in that situation. And even if you expanding that league is super, super simple. You keep one going down and you just promote both champions. And over the space of 3-4 years, your league expands from 12 to 14, 15, 16 sides. The way you balance it out is with kind of promotion and relegation from the 3rd to the 4th tier. Likewise, with the top of the championship, if you wanted to expand the league, you can still do it whilst having relegation. I'm not one for just letting people apply for a WSL license, and then just promoting people arbitrarily. It should still be on merit. Again, you could promote the top 2, relegate the bottom 1 from the WSL, and after 3 years, you're going to have kind of 15 sides there. So I think we do need to expand the top leagues. I think in doing so, will kind of just improve the quality, really. I've got some points. I have got something to say, actually, really for all the points. So I'll stop and let Connor carry on with this one.
Yeah, just on this one, I'll expand the top. I agree with what you're saying. I think that it needs 2 or 3 years of almost like one down, 2 up, just to filter it into the top. Because I agree with what Gareth's saying. We've seen I've seen a few tier 3 this season that they'll handle their own. There's so many good teams in tier 3 at the moment that need to go up. Because the problem you have is players will just start to get impatient. If you're constantly, say you win the league back 2 years run but don't go up because of somebody in the other division that then go up, players are just going to leave and then they'll go up to the next level, or which is fine for the player, but it's not great for the club and it doesn't help expand the leads. Then you're right there, Matt.
I just look at this over the water that was still water and it started bubbling, so it's fizzy now. And I'm thinking, what sort of science experiment's this? But anyway.
Yeah, so obviously there was the upward movement, wasn't there, in 2021? I think it might have been last year. I think it was. But anyway, yeah, it needs to look at not just at top 3. I don't think. I think you could probably do it for the top 5. I think you probably look at this. Me and John and obviously Andrew watch and yourselves. Obviously know 4 and 5 quite well as well. You're just looking at 5. There's 4 or 5 teams that can go up from that division. But again, because only 1 are going up, you've got 3 teams that are just stuck in that cycle for another season. But yeah, it needs doing. This is what I was just saying about the WSL earlier. You've got the top 3 plus United now trying to break into it. What have the rest of the teams got? You almost need something else, something to fight for. The extra place of a relegation, for example, or some kind of playoff, or I don't know, something to make it a bit more interesting, because the fear would just be Chelsea, Arsenal, City, United, the rest, top of the championship, the rest. You don't want that to happen, because then at the end of the day, you're trying to sell this as a product, and the only way to do that is to make it entertaining. If you've got teams that are just stuck in cycles, winning every single week because they're stuck in a league that they shouldn't be in, it's not fair, and it's not fair on the other teams in the league. So, yeah, definitely the championship and the top 3 leagues easily can go to 14. 16 as well for the top 2. I don't see why that would be an issue.
Yeah. I think it's something we've chatted about, because I look at the 4th tier Division 1 North now, and obviously there's Newcastle and there's Liverpool Feds. And I just think, for me, like, one of them's not going to go up. If you've got, you will have one of them teams in there next year that's just going to be smashing most teams every week. And then you've got a couple of teams fighting for 2nd and 3rd, and then everybody else. It not devalues it, but it's not, do you know what I mean, competitive wise. Plus, like you mentioned, Connor, about talent, like there's a lot of talent in sort of those 3rd, 4th, 5th tiers. Like you say, just become impatient and disappear. I'll quickly take that before we move on to point 2. I think we've discussed this, haven't we, Gareth? Like a playoff between, similar to rugby, really, rugby league, for those that follow that, a playoff between sort of bottom 2 of the WSL and top 2 of the championship, or something like that to mix it about. But I do feel like it's time that we sort of, we let clubs that are ready and financially ready, like Wolves and Southampton, both go up. We can add other options in there as well, Ipswich, etc. But I just feel like it's a bizarre thing. So if that's something that's looked into, I'm sure there'll not be too many complaints. Point 2, Gareth, football in schools. Now, obviously, I know you work in a college, but go at it from a grassroots point of view, because you've got an insight into that.
Yeah, I think what we want to see is kind of a lot of sister clubs. I know Durham are really, really good for this. Durham have a lot of kind of grassroots clubs that are associated with them and kind of get involved with them and that they'll work with as well. I think it's becoming something that's a lot more prevalent, and I know the FA are involved in trying to kind of produce more female-friendly clubs, and they're kind of changing the way that their chartering system works. So they're now kind of introducing a star system. In order to be a 3-star club, you need to meet specific requirements with a boys' pathway, a girls' pathway, and a disability pathway. And without kind of being able to hit those 3, you're not going to be a 3-star club. So things are being encouraged more. Obviously, those requirements differ between boys and girls. You need less girls teams than you do boys teams in order to get that. But it is something that the FA kind of are definitely looking at and looking to increase. And recruitment of coaches is another one. But that's an entirely different topic. But yeah, so I think what we're seeing is that actually grassroots football is starting to expand. it's just not necessarily expanding quick enough. You can kind of go any village, anywhere, and there will be a boys' football team. And what you'll probably see is there are a few girls on those football teams, and they're happy playing on that football team until they get to about 11, 12 years old. Then they start high school, and then what will happen is they'll drop out because they don't really want to play with the boys anymore. And so they kind of just stop playing football. So we need to make sure that actually there is this pathway in order so that girls don't need to play like boys football and can play girls football. And it is improving. 63% of schools in England offer football for boys and girls, but that needs to increase. And I think the FA want to increase that by 12% up to 75% in the next couple of years. So it's definitely something that needs to change. And also we want to see a pathway. Even we've seen this year with United the strength of the development side there in the RTC. There needs to be this pathway for girls to be able to play at clubs all the way through from under 8s all the way through to open age. That I think will kind of be the real key.
Yeah, I think just to touch on that as well, obviously you mentioned them numbers there. I think another thing that blags me is the fact that there's still schools that have this sort of, ideology that, boys should do football, cricket and rugby, and they have the girls doing netball, hockey and like rounders or something. And I just think that doesn't help. You're talking about, when you said about get coaches, and I suppose in a school sort of setting, if you're not getting coaches in, then you should be looking to upskill teachers to teach that and get rid of these daft sort of old outdated views. I think another thing is facilities. I think whether that's schools or grassroots, I think facilities need massively improving. Even things as basic as like a changing room. You wouldn't believe how many clubs where players get changed in the car park in the car because there's nothing as simple as a changing room. And then I think failing that for me, if Premier League clubs, well, not even Premier League clubs, Premier League clubs, WSL clubs, can get people in schools. I think we've talked about this before on a Saturday night show, getting people in there as role models, even some of those clubs potentially helping out if they can financially. Then I think that for me, the Premier League Stars is a great community program, but I think it needs more of that where sort of, sometimes players go in and coaches from the club go in, whether it's RTC or academy, and they'll do like a special day with the kids. I want to move on to point number 3, and I'll start with you, Connor. 11:30 kickoffs. Now, we've got to be careful here because everybody with the TV deal, and we said how great it would be for not only the revenue but the exposure. But we have to take a hit here, don't we? Yes, we love it, and yes, it's brilliant. Apart from the 11:30 sort of kickoff times, go on, talk to me on that.
It's honestly the worst thing that's happened this season, in my opinion. It's just because it's not even. I know in the article it talks about the fans and the hits for away fans. Now, obviously, United, just from a United point of view, obviously we had Reading at 11:30. That's a hell of a trek at 11:30. Anyway, for a 12:30, that's quite a trek. And 11:30 is even worse. But it's not even just for the fans; it's for the players as well. It affects that hour affects everything because it affects your arrival time to the ground, your pre-match meal. It affects what you can eat. Are you really want to be, having pasta at fucking like 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning? Like, no chance. So it affects everything, and I think it eventually will affect the quality of the game. Obviously, it didn't affect City earlier too much, but. It's just, no, not for me. I get it. They want to try and put it on TV and all those kinds of things, and that's great. That Sky are doing it, but and obviously the BBC as well. But obviously it's mainly being pushed by Sky. Just no. There's got to be other ways around putting it on TV. Whether that becomes in the future, obviously, because Sky at the moment, Sky Sports in particular, have got so many channels now. Sky Sports Premier League and Main Event and Golf and F1 and all these other ones. It might become in the future that there's a Sky Sports WSL channel and they purely show the games on there.
Hopefully.
And that would stop this. You give people a choice then, put it at 12:30 or 5 o'clock or whatever, and there won't be a direct clash with someone else and you can have them both on.
Yeah. Do you want to take that as well, Connor, just quickly?
Yeah, I mean, 12. I'm not a huge fan of 12:30. Me personally, I just prefer afternoon kickoffs. Yeah. 1 o'clock is probably about right. 2 o'clock's not the end of the world. Yeah, no earlier than 12. No chance.
I can see why they do it in terms of like if it's a Saturday, they don't want to clash with the men. But then I just think there's got to be better planning. Our first home game against Reading Friday night, and I just think if you're again, a Reading fan coming up, or any fan coming up from anywhere, it's a bit of a stretch, isn't it? After work, you mentioned City before today. I think there was one. In fact, is it tomorrow? Everton Spurs, where it's 6:45. But they moved the game like a week ago, and now all the Spurs fans are like, well, we've booked travel and accommodation, and now it's a faff. Gareth, just quickly get your thoughts as well on these early kickoffs and sort of trying to manage it against clashing with men's games.
I think actually the main issue isn't anything to do with the fans. It's not anything to do with the men's team. It's not anything to do with viewers either necessarily. It clashes with grassroots games. So if you're playing a game on a Sunday morning, which is when the vast majority of the grassroots games are, and Saturday mornings, then it's going to clash. So if you're playing in a game that kicks off at 10, you'll only be done by 11:30, so you don't be able to actually go and watch the game. So I think that's probably one of the main issues. I think trying to avoid clashes with men's games is the right thing to do. But the way to do that, as we've seen, is just to go later. So actually that 6:45 p.m. kickoff slot has actually been the most viewed slot of all of them, actually. So that's the slot on TV that gets the most views. The Manchester Derby got over 1 million views. And I think, I can't remember exactly which team it was. It might have been Man City Spurs or something like that. Also kind of averaged much, much higher than the 11:30 kickoff. So yeah, I think 11:30 kickoff needs to go. And what I would much rather see is have a late kickoff weekly. However, that late kickoff should be a Saturday, not a Sunday, because if we're playing, let's say we're playing away to Arsenal, and it's a 6:45 p.m. kickoff, that's not looking to finish until gone, 8:15, 8:30. People then have got a 4-hour drive back. That's a late evening. It's essentially, people getting up for work the next day. Public transport at that point as well, that late on the Sunday isn't going to be running. So, yeah, I think the late kickoff is the way to go, but on a Saturday, not a Sunday.
Yeah. Point number 4, Connor, access to modern stadiums. Now, obviously, I mentioned Barcelona before and the success they've had, obviously, having games at the new camp. Personally, for me, it's a tricky one. I do sort of understand there's been points made over City's Academy Stadium for the Euros, and people are saying, why didn't we look at sort of Preston, Bolton, Blackburn, Barnes that have got like 20, 25,000? But I think for me, modern stadiums are great and men's stadiums are great if they can be full. One-off games potentially, but I just look at the Old Trafford game when we played Everton and I'm thinking, was Everton the right game? If you're looking for the result, then yes. If you're looking in terms of getting it full, I think that 20,000 probably becomes 40, 50, 60,000 if it's against a Man City and Arsenal. Poor standard-wise, but yeah, it's one of them. But what do you think?
Is he definitely finished now? I don't know whether that was just mine or whether Matt was lagging all over the place. But,
no, don't go on.
Oh, there we go. He is there. So I don't know where I stand. My opinion's changed over the season on this in terms of the bigger grounds, because it doesn't look great on the TV. Like I said, when you're trying to sell, I say this a lot, when you're trying to sell the product itself, look at Reading away, for example. It's a massive ground, obviously, that down at I don't know whether it's even still called the Medeski anymore, down there. And there was about 1,000 odd people. So it looks really empty. And then you get, all these idiots online saying whatever they want. But for me, it shouldn't make too much of a difference. You should, as a fan, I think you should want to go anyway, regardless of where it is. I've said this for a while now that, and I think Charlie made this point on the show not so long back, everyone moans about Lee. Oh, it's out the way. It's out there. People act like it's in like America. It's only half an hour outside.
It's hard if you don't drive.
Yeah, it's a bit of a trek if you don't drive, and obviously public track, and things like that. But it's not completely out in the wilderness, It's not that far, and it's a decent ground at the end of the day. So I don't think it would make if you had every game at the men's ground. So every WSL team went, right, we're playing in the men's grounds. I don't think it would improve attendances that much. It may be on one-offs, United, Liverpool, City, so on. It would be big. But when United go and play Leicester the week after, are you going to get 20k there? I don't think you would. I think it would drop back down again. So, yeah, I don't think it would make a whole host of difference. I think it's a bit different in Spain. Barcelona, the fan base, for the women's game that they've got over there is slightly different. And the thing is with Barcelona, they've got so many different brands and avenues that if you support Barca, you support Barca, like in everything. So it's slightly different. I'm not against it. Like I said, I've quite enjoyed going to some of these grounds this season. Obviously, Reading, Birmingham, not so much. But, King Power is a really nice ground. Don't mind it, but I just don't like seeing grounds that empty because it doesn't look great on the cameras. And also, it doesn't do the atmosphere much good either.
Yeah. I think just before I pass to you, Gareth, I think one thing there you mentioned about, are you going to fill the ground sort of every week was a perfect example. Was it Brighton straight after Old Trafford? So we went from 20k at Old Trafford to Brighton when we got below our usual average attendance, and it was like 1,500. So that just shows it doesn't always have the bounce on effect in terms of getting people down. Gareth, modern stadiums, and obviously I don't know if you want to bring in that point as well about selling out Lee.
So at the start of the season, I'd have agreed with Connor. I now don't. I think.
Go on.
I think playing in the men's stadium is always going to be a good thing. I think primarily one because what I think the important thing with the women's game that we want to see is equality of resources and equality of kind of access to these resources. So I think playing in the men's stadiums actually just is a signal of intent really from the clubs that, we're taking this seriously. We're serious about our women's team, and we want to invest in them. But I also think it does improve attendances. Are we going to get 35,000 people every week to go to Stamford Bridge to watch Chelsea? No. But what you will see is an improvement of attendances. If every team next year said, okay, we're going to play at the men's stadium, in the top flight, then you would see an improvement. Leicester, massive improvement from playing at Quorn to playing at the King Power. I'm not sure what Reading's attendances were last year. They averaged about 1,000 this year. I don't think there was that last year when they played at Wickham. I think if West Ham weren't playing out in Dagenham and were playing actually in London, then they would also see an improvement in their attendances there. Likewise with Boreham Wood and Kingsmeadow, they're kind of out of the way. I think if they were playing at Stamford Bridge and the Emirates, then there would be improvements there. So, I think the bulk of the attendances would come from big games. You'd get more at the Manchester Derby than you would United against Spurs, for example. But, we saw the attendance that was possible with actually really, really poor marketing from United for us against Everton. So I think you could sell it as a package. And I think if it was going to be there every year and it was going to be marketed properly and clubs were actually going to go for it and be on board with it, then I think we'd actually see some really good attendances. Especially coming after a home Euros. I think if it's going to happen next season is the season to do it and kind of strike while the iron's hot. Otherwise, it could be decades before we get another major tournament here.
Yeah, I 100% agree on the last point. The quick point I just wanted to make, though, was just losing Leicester as an example, looking at their attendances. Obviously, they started off really strong at the start of the season, quite above kind of 3K. You're looking for a lot of their attendances. But I'm just looking mid-season, early Jan. They beat Brighton at home with 1,700 there. Then the week after, they played Villa at home, and there was 500 people. So this is a whole other conversation, but it's like there's still a drop off no matter where the games are. Even if it's still at the King Power, there's still a huge drop off the week later for whatever reason it is. And I think just looking at the attendance for the rest of the season against the bigger sides, obviously there was, Arsenal and Chelsea, that was much bigger back into the 2000s. But, you go a couple of weeks before that, West Ham at home, 550. And it's like, it does depend who you're playing. I don't think it's all on the stadium itself.
Just a quick point on that. Leicester Villa wasn't at the King Power, it was at the Pirelli.
Okay. Right.
I was just going to say, I don't recall the 500 and whatever at the King Power. So yeah, they'll be the Pirelli ones.
So thanks for proving my point there, Connor, inadvertently.
Yeah, I was going to say, I may have just contradicted myself and proved you right,
To be fair, the Pirelli is about a good 40 minutes from the King Power the wrong way. So, yeah. Anyway.
But I think...
Sorry, go on.
I think what you're getting at there actually is, I think at the moment, a lot of women's football fans... other than kind of that group that will go regardless, are relatively fair weather fans. So I think what we'll see is that the higher attendances at the beginning and at the end of the season, and in that middle from like November, December, January, it will drop off because it's wet, it's cold, and actually families, younger kids, maybe not necessarily wanting to go. I think it's changing, but I think that is still a contributing factor as well.
Yeah. Gareth, sticking with you then on point number 5, prize money. Now next year, the FA Cup, it's increased from just over 400k, the prize money, the pot, to 3 million. Compared to the men's 16 million, it's a massive gap, but I suppose an increase of, sort of 2.6 million can't really be sniffed at. I think for me, one thing I would like to see improved, it's great doing it for the FA Cup, but what about the Conti Cup? And especially the league as well, sort of league places and league winners are not on, a massive amount. But your thoughts on the prize money?
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. I think it's a good thing. Obviously, I think we need to go further as well. And I believe it was either Tom or Stu Barker we had on that mentioned that it's the prize money, the kind of biggest increases are going to be in the earlier rounds. Kind of percentage wise, that's good. That needs to be the case. I think it's these smaller clubs actually that need the prize money more than the likes of United, City, Chelsea. Clapton getting a few, 15,000 or whatever, however much they could have got for where they got to would have been massive. Same for FC, same for Stour. That's where the prize money needs to be focused. It's good they've increased, but we need to do more.
Yeah. Don't drag this one out, Connor. But 0.6 on full-time referees. I'm not saying don't drag it out on purpose, but I mean, like we have that many rants on refs. We could be here all day. Something that we know is going to take time, and we need the money to train them. And obviously, they are juggling full-time work with a part-time officiating role. But yeah, go on to give it me on refs.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say on them. To be fair, it's a tough job. Anyone who's done refereeing will tell you it's not as easy as people think it is. And just because let's say, for example, all of the training, let's say there's a massive push this summer. They go, right, we're going to invest heavily into referees in the women's game. We're going to make them professional and really go for it. It's going to take time for that to actually show. It's not just going to happen overnight. Just because you train them all in the summer doesn't mean next season everything's going to be great. So it is still going to take a bit of time for that to feed in. But it's important once you put that money into the training doesn't just stop there. It's got to filter down. It's got to be continuous, because otherwise you'll have a good batch of referees, then it will stop. Then you'll have the next batch that are maybe not as good. So the training just needs to be consistent, and the investment. It goes back to the whole point about the investment in women's football as a whole. When you talk about that, you're talking about the wages, you're talking about the prize money, you're talking about the referees, you're talking about the technology and the infrastructure, you're talking about everything. It just needs consistent cash injections to help the growth.
Yeah, and I think with the cash injections, I think that will, what's the word? It should provide better training. Like, I think the training's the main thing. If they were training and, working sort of 5-6 days a week and getting paid a proper wage, that would help rather than them being part-time. Gareth, I'll come to you on referees quickly before we go into point 7.
Yeah, nothing really to add. It's going to take time. It needs that investment. They need to make sure they're trained properly. Yeah, not really much else to add.
Cool. In that case, I'll stick with you then on point 7. Sort of medical provision and player welfare. It says here, WSL rules do not require an away team to send a club doctor. So that would mean then there'd be just the home club doctor present. Comparing that to the Premier League rules, where it's a minimum of 4, so it has to be 2 from the home team and 2 from the home team and 2 from the away team. What do you make of that? Because I mean, another thing is as well, and I've noticed this a lot, and it's something we'll touch on sort of next few weeks. There's a lot of ACL injuries, and obviously women are more prone to suffering them than men. But yeah, thoughts on that and medical provision.
I think it's just insulting. I think what you do if you don't send a team doctor and you're in the top flight of a game and you're not sending a doctor to your away games, what you're inadvertently saying is that actually you don't really care about your women's team, and they're not worth that added expense of sending a team doctor. I think it's just downright insulting. I think. But I think we've seen before that actually games can be stopped for hours and hours whilst you wait for emergency services to arrive. In the men's game, that would never happen. Kind of in the professional men's game, definitely not. There would be an ambulance on site, ready and waiting, and they would kind of be stretched off the pitch into the ambulance and off they go. So I think at least at WSL level, that should be the case. I know the LSV are pretty good actually at having emergency services and ambulances there, but it's not everywhere. So yeah, I think actually, if you can't be bothered to face the extra expense of a team doctor on every single one of your trips, then actually you just that just shows a complete lack of respect.
I still get nightmares as well of that Charlton game. Connor, do you want to take the comment on screen?
Yeah, I can do it. I think it is too early for VAR because, like I said, there's no point having VAR if the referees are not making the correct decisions in the first instance. So you've got to have, because ultimately VAR's not a computer. Obviously, I know it's technology, but it's still a human making the decision. So you still need the people making the decisions to be up to the level to make those correct decisions in the first place. Goal line technology, yes, but again, you go back to stadium infrastructure, and this goes back to the earlier point. In the men's grounds, that's probably not going to be an issue, but in some of these other grounds that we've been to this season, you're not getting that at Durham away, or some of the other stadiums we've been to, the smaller grounds this season, and Everton and places like that. You're not getting that there. So, if you're going to have that in, you have it for everyone. So yeah, I missed and how many goals have been missed. I've got no idea. From a United point of view, you look at Reading and Everton, Martha Thomas and Honor didn't really affect the game. So, but you look at teams like Chelsea and Arsenal. You could argue if Chelsea don't win the title, have they been kind of robbed of that with some of the goals Arsenal have been given in those games against Chelsea? So yeah, it's a tough one.
Yep, and the final bit of Tom's article was wage limits. And again, we're not going to go off on one of these debates that people throw up about equal pay. But I think what the point Tom was making was that if you look at some WSL players, he's saying there's some of them, and I'm assuming this will be aimed at Chelsea players, earning 250 grand a year. Now, it's not clear whether that's out and out wage or that includes sponsorships as well. But you just think 250 grand per year. And there's clubs like Birmingham where they're struggling to pay them, or they're just about paying the minimum wage, and those clubs that pay in the championship as well. Gareth, I'll start with you. Could a wage limit or salary cap potentially be something that grows the game or hinders it?
In a word, yes, I think it'll grow the game. I think the reason for this is if you look at a lot of American sports, you look at the NFL, NBA, MLB, etc., they all have salary caps. And I think what's really interesting about those games is, yes, you will have teams go through a period of dominance, but what will happen is they may get a star, and that star will carry them to success. And then in order to rebuild, what they'll do is they'll offload all their stars to free up salary space to then start to look to rebuild. You see it in the NBA all the time. Golden State Warriors, They had massive salary cap, loads of stars. They had Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and a whole host of others. They won titles for a few years, and then actually they thought, okay, actually we need to rebuild now. We need to offload some of the salary cap to get rid of Kevin Durant. We need to kind of move some players on, and kind of other players come through and seek to kind of rebuild. And you never see in those American sports one team having years upon years upon years of just sustained dominance. And actually it keeps it fresh. It keeps it entertaining. And I think that's kind of one thing that I find really enjoyable about watching those leagues is you can have the New England Patriots go on a run for years, be one of the most successful kind of sides ever, and then can fall off a cliff a couple of years later because they've hit their cap and the players are old and they're trying to get rid of them to rebuild. So yes, it could grow the game. I think it could make the league a lot more competitive because everybody will be on the same playing field. But I think what it also needs to be done is managed properly. What we don't want is something like financial fair play because no one really knows what that means. Everyone has their own various different iterations of it, and the penalties for breaching it are insane. As in, they aren't really penalties. So it needs to be kind of properly done and properly implemented. But yeah, I think there's potential there that it can really make the game really interesting.
And Connor, your thoughts just to wrap it up?
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add, to be honest. I think, like Gareth said, you don't want it to be like FFP because nobody really knows what that is. It's just, it's a tough one because you don't want to stunt the growth of teams that are trying to excel and become the number one, by putting caps all over the place. I don't really know where I stand on this one because it's a real tough one because there's a lot of talk, obviously, on the men's side at the moment with Newcastle, obviously, with their takeover, that they're just going to throw loads of money at it. But should they be denied the right of becoming a top 4 team just because of their ownership? It's a tough one. So I get what Gareth's saying, with the American, obviously, teams over there, they have, with the salary caps of all the NFL, quite a lot to understand the caps they have over there. But yeah, I'm not too sure. It comes back to what I was saying before in terms of the growth of it. It needs to be sustainable because at the moment, obviously, the salaries are a long way off the men's sides, but you don't want it to come out of control where the players are getting paid so much that it's not sustainable for some of the smaller clubs because they can't compete with those salaries. So there's got to be a limit somewhere.
Yeah,
I think the main difference between kind of the WSL and America, even rugby league, right? The salary cap there.
Yeah.
There isn't big European competitions. If there was a salary cap in the WSL, it would put the likes of Chelsea, City, Arsenal, United at a disadvantage compared to Barcelona, Wolfsburg, Bayern, PSG. Whereas in the American sports, the pinnacle is that league. In rugby league, the only real thing we have that's international is a game against the NRL champions from Australia rather, and they are just a better quality league and thrash the British team every single time. So yeah, I think the tricky nature of that is going to be like it will hinder our chances in the Champions League. If it was a purely insular league where we only really played domestically, then it could work. But kind of looking outside of that, it would need to be a decision from UEFA rather than from the FA.
Yeah. Well, that's it. We've come to the end of our show. Thank you to you both for joining me. Thank you to everybody that's tuned in and for all the comments as well. Game day tomorrow, so keep an eye on our socials for little updates and tweets on that. Schedule will be out as well for you to have a look at for the upcoming week. We've also got the weekly catch-ups as well tomorrow for anything you missed. And then Monday, we're back with John Foster for his Match Reaction show. That's it. We'll see you on Monday. Cheers, guys.